Hi and welcome. My name is Ken Fisher and this is Lifelink Training. Now today I've been mostly playing, I've been working on changing photos into pencil sketches using filters and smart objects in Photoshop. Okay, today I found a few steps where I could turn this kind of image into this kind of image, which I thought was quite cool. And because I thought it was so interesting, I thought I would share it with you step by step. Now, if you're a fan of the printed page, there is a step-by-step ebook that you can download from my website. Just click the link under the video in the More area to download it. There's also a link to download the file which I'm using, which you can get absolutely free from pixabay.com. Okay, let's get on. Righty-ho. If you're following along with my ebook, this is step 1. Now, first we're going to duplicate the layer. Now, my preferred method for doing this is to use the keyboard shortcut of Command and J. I'm going to rename this Gaussian Blur. Always a good habit to get into, renaming your layers, so you know where you're going. Okay, there we go. We've got this duplicated layer, and now we're going to add a black and white adjustment layer, and we're going to do that by going down to the bottom of the layers panel and click this little black and white icon here, and then we're going to choose black and white. And that's going to do what it says on the tin. It's going to make it go black and white, the image. Now I'm going to click back on the Gaussian blur layer, and we're going to change its blend mode to color dodge. And that's going to make it more contrasty and blow out the highlights a little bit in the face, which is the effect I'm looking for. Next, I want to invert this Gaussian blur layer. And the easiest way that we can do that is, again, with a keyboard shortcut. I do love my keyboard shortcuts of Control or Command and I. And there it goes. The image is gone. And that's okay. That's where we need to be. So if you're still following along the ebook, then checkpoint 1, your image and your layers panel should look like this. Okay, then onwards and upwards on to step 2. Now the next step, I want to add a filter effect, but I want to do it non-destructively so I can go back and edit it and change it anytime I want. I don't want it to affect the pixels. So I'm going to turn the Gaussian blur layer into a smart object, and I'm going to do that by I put my mouse over the layer and I right click and I select Convert to Smart Object, and you'll see that's now done it. Now you see this little symbol in the corner. That means that this is now a smart object. And now I can add filters to this, but instead of changing the pixels, they actually just like sit on the outside of this, because that's in a protective Okay, so let's go up to the filter menu and let's go down to blur, and we'll try a Gaussian blur. And now when I play with the radius, it will change just exactly what we see. So I can go down and have a really light pencil sort of effect. Or if you go even higher, then it gives you more of a black and white photographic effect, which is still quite cool actually. But no, we'll put it down at around, I think 5, something like that. I think was good for my image. Now filters are resolution dependent, so the settings that I use are for this image. They may not work the same for your image. So what you'll have to do is just experiment a little bit if you don't get the same type of effect. Okay, well, checkpoint 2, your image and your layers panel should now look like this. Step 3. Now we need to duplicate the background layer, because I need it for something. So I'm going to make sure that my background layer is active so I can click on it. I'm going to duplicate it with a keyboard shortcut of Control if you're on a Windows machine and Command if you're on a Mac. I'm going to do Command or Control and J. And That's going to duplicate it and make me a background copy. And then I'm going to click on it and I'm going to drag it right to the top of the stack. And you've got to wait till that little single line appears at the top of the stack and then let it go. And then I want to desaturate this because I want it to be black and white. So again, I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut of a Control if you're on a Windows machine, but I'm on a Mac machine. So I'm going to use Command, Shift and U for desaturate. And that's going to take all the colour out. And that's brilliant. And then I'm going to rename this layer again so I know what it is. I'm going to double click on it and I'm going to call it Glowing Edges. And I'm going to click to accept that. Okay, so checkpoint 3, your image and layers panel should now look like this. Step 4. Now we need to convert the layer to a smart object. Now we did this earlier in step 2, so I'm going to go over the glowing edges layer and I'm going to right click and I'm going to select convert to smart object, because again I'm going to be using a filter and I'd like to do it non-destructively so that I can go back and alter it and change it at any time. Now we're going to add the glowing edges filter, so I'm going to go up to the filter menu and I'm going to go to filter gallery. But in the stylize area we've got something called glowing edges because I just want to try and pick out the edges on this. And if you can't see anything, it's probably because it's just a little bit big for the preview. I'm at 100% preview here. So if I click this little minus button, you'll see that the image will get a little bit smaller. And then when I get down to 25%, I'll be able to see it full screen in that little preview. And that's about right. On this one, I've got an edge width of say 1. And the brightness of 6 and a smoothness of about 4 is I think what I thought was about right for this image. Now if you use another image you might need to experiment a little bit and choose different settings to me. These settings are really for this image that I'm using in the demonstration. Okay, we're going to click OK. Now that's got white lines on a black background. And we really need the opposite, so we need to invert this image. Now this can be done as we did earlier with a keyboard shortcut, Control if you're on Windows and Command if you're on a Mac, and I. So I'm going to press Command and I, and that's going to invert it now to give me my black lines, which is my pencil lines on my white background. And then I want to drop all this white out. So on this layer, the glowing edges layer, I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply. Now multiply as a blend mode can't see white, so it basically just drops out all the white and just leaves us with the pencil sketch. So if I click multiply, we get something like that. Now checkpoint 4, your image and your layers panel should now look like this. Step 5. Next, we need again to duplicate the background layer. So, do you remember how we did that? Well, I'm going to click on the background layer and then we're going to use the keyboard shortcut Command or Control and J. That's going to duplicate the background layer. And then we're going to drag it up to the top of the stack like we did before and let it go. There it is on the top of the stack. And we're going to desaturate it again. Do you remember how we did that? That's right. It's Command or Control, Shift and U. So I'm going to do Command, Shift and U. That's going to desaturate it. And then we'll rename it Charcoal, because we're going to be using the charcoal filter on it. Now again, just like we did in step 2, we want to convert this to a smart object. So I'm going to right click and click on Convert to Smart Object. There it is. You can see, you can tell it's a smart object by that little icon there. Now just make sure that when we look in the charcoal filter that your foreground and background colours are set to black and white. If they're not, you can press the D key and the X key to toggle. So the D key resets to foreground and background colour. The X key toggles it round for you. Now we're going to go and find the charcoal filter. So we're going to go to the filter and filter gallery again, and this time we'll find it in the sketch section, and here we've got the charcoal filter, and all we do, we click on it and it brings it up for us. Now again, it may be a bit big, so I'm just going to click the minus sign here just to zoom it out a little bit, and that doesn't look bad. I'm quite liking that. Okay, we'll look at some settings that I've used for this, but again, you may need to do different ones for yours. If you do a different image, if you're following along with me, then you could probably use the same ones. And I'm going to look at charcoal thickness of 3, detail of 2, and light and dark, something maybe 45 to 47, something like that. Yep, that's not bad. And when we've done, we're going to click OK. And then again, I want to drop all this white out, so I'm going to change the blend mode of that layer now. I'm going to change that to multiply, and boom. Oh, that's looking really good. Now, checkpoint 5, your image and your layers panel should look like this. Okay, we're nearly there. Now it's time for you maybe to get a little bit arty now. I mean, there may be areas that are a little bit too blown out. I'm really liking the face, and if I just zoom in, you can see that we are looking really sketchy like, but there's some areas like maybe the hair. I'd like to a bit more in the hair, and there's some of these light areas here that I might need. I don't want darkening down. So okay, let's have a go at that. So what I'm going to do at the minute is just create a brand new layer, and I'm going to call this line drawing. Ooh, don't you just hate that when it capitalizes? Just a minute, let me see if I can get rid of that. I'll put a small line. There we go, we've got line drawing. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to select the brush tool. So you can go and click on the brush tool over here, or you can just press the B key on the keyboard. And then I'm going to select maybe a 1 pixel brush, very, very small brush with 0% hardness. I want a really hard brush. And then I'd like my opacity and the flow to be about 50%. Well, you can see here this is set from before, but there's a really good keyboard shortcut that I love on being able to change the opacity and the flow from the keyboard. So if I want the opacity to change, then I've just got to press a number on the keyboard, and if I want the flow to change, I need to hold the shift key down and press a number on the keyboard. So if I want the opacity to be, say, 70%, as long as I've got the brush tool active, I can just press a 7 and it goes to 70. If I want 100%, I press 0, and if I want 50%, I press the 5 key. Now on the flow, all I do is I hold the shift key down and press, let's say 7 for 70%, and shift and 0 for 100%, and shift and 5 for 50%. A real time saver, that one. Now this is much easier on if you've got a pen and tablet. It's doable with the mouse, but it's just not quite as easy. So I'll just show you a little bit. So let's say this area here down at the bottom, I wanted to really just to darken it down a little bit. Well, all I'm going to do is I'm basically just scribbling. So I've got black as my foreground colour, so I'm just doing a little bit of scribbling on that layer, on my line drawing layer, just to darken it down a little bit. And the scribble basically just like blends in with the rest of what looks like a line drawing. So I'll just turn that on and off just to show you. You can see I'm just darkening it down with a bit of scribble. And this is one that I might want to do as well, because it's quite a big hole, so I'd probably spend a little bit more time just putting some scribble in there to darken it down. And I could lift the opacity and the flow, but I don't want to make this a 3-hour video for you, so I'm just showing you what I would do. So I would go and give it a little bit of scribble in there, more or less at the same angle maybe, and it does just darken things down. You can cover things up if you go at it long enough. Yeah, I think that looks okay. It's a little bit gritty, which is where I wanted to be with it, a little bit gritty, and I could probably do a little bit in the hair. Just do a little bit in the hair, and you can get arty and go a little bit cross-hatching if you want. But it'll just fill it in a little bit and just make it look a little bit better. Let me just turn that line drawing on and off. You can see I've got a little bit more in the hair, a little bit of dimension in the hair, and I'm covering up some of these areas down here. Okay, so it doesn't work on every single piece of this thing every time. You've got a little bit of work to do on it, but once you've done it, it looks a heck of a lot better. With a pen and tablet, it's a little bit more organic. You can actually draw, which it's not as easy with the mouse, but it's doable. Right, so checkpoint 6, it's wherever you got to with it, but basically your image and layers panel should look something like this. Step 7, I think as a final step, I'd like to maybe add a hint of colour. So I'm going to do this with a solid colour fill layer, a blend mode, and a little blend if magic. Okay, first thing, let's add a solid colour fill layer. Now I'm going to do that by going down to the bottom of the layers panel, click and hold down and select solid colour. And then I'm going to pick a colour from the colour picker. And we'll say, I'll pick a red, something like that, and click OK. Now to blend this in with all the detail underneath, I'm going to use the blend mode, and I'm going to choose the good old multiply blend mode. Now I think that looks pretty good, but I'm going to go one stage further now and use a little bit of blend if. Now blend if is in the styles panel. If I go right over into this corner here, just on not where the name is, but just underneath, right over in the corner, and I double click, there's like a secret button. And that brings up the layer styles dialog, and here you can see the blend if dialog. And all I'm going to do with this is I'm going to grab the bottom white slider, the right hand side one, and I'm going to drag it to the left, and that's going to take away some of the red. And then I'm going to hold the Alt key down and I'm going to split the slider. I'm going to click on it to split it into two. And now I'm just going to drag this slider over. Now when we split the slider, what we're doing is making a softer transition. So I can then experiment with these sliders to find an area where I think the blend looks good. And I just want this to be a little bit edgy. So I don't want it bright red. I just want it a little bit, yeah, something like that. Anyway, you can experiment yourself to come up with something that you think would look good. And then when you're done, click OK. And I think that looks pretty cool. I'm liking that a lot. So checkpoint 7, really your image and your layers panel should look something like this. Right, well that is absolutely fantastic. If you've got there, you've now created quite a complex multi-layered document. And I think it looks pretty cool. Now what I wanted to do was just experiment with other images, and I didn't want to go through all this malarkey every single time. So what I did, I wrote an action, and here it is in the actions panel. It's called pencil sketch action, and it was just really for me to experiment with other images because to see if some worked, and to be honest, the experimenting I've been doing, some work and some don't. So you have to do a little bit of cleanup work on some of the images when they don't work. Now this one is a classic example, so I'll just give it a go. What I want to show you is that sometimes the action actually brings out some of the artifacts. So I'll just show you what I mean by that. I'll just put a levels adjustment layer on there, and I'll lighten it up. And you can see here all these artifacts that are hiding underneath. Well, they will come out. If they're there, they will come out once you've run the action. Okay, so let's just get rid of that, and you'll see exactly what I mean when it comes. You can't see it at the moment, but I'm going to run the action. So I'm going to get my action, and I'm going to click the little arrow to run it. And I'll just accept all the defaults. It allows you to make some changes as you go through. and it's just doing all the steps that we've done until we get to the end, and then we can say okay, we'll continue and we'll finish. So we end up with this as an image, but you can see that although the image looks not bad, the dress and everything there, it's pulled in quite a lot of artifacts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the dress back and make it black, and then I've got something else which we're going to do really just to clean up around the edge of that hair there. Now you don't have to watch me doing it, so what I'll do is I'll just put a new layer on, and I'll call it dress, and then I'll quickly just paint the dress back in for you. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, welcome back. That's all a dress painted in. I've just painted a little bit of black on a separate layer. But now I'd like to try and make this hair edge here look a little bit like it's been pencil drawn, that fits in with the rest of the image. Now if you go to brusheezy.com, you can download a set of brushes. Now let me just go and get my brush panel. And in the presets, down at the bottom here, I've got these 1, 2, 3, there's 5 I think brushes from Brusheezy, which are like sketch brushes, and they are really excellent. And let's try that one. We'll try this one first, and they are HD brushes, so they are quite big, so I'll just get that really small, and then I'll zoom in a bit with Control or Command and Plus, and then I'll spacebar drag to get me at the edge of the hairline somewhere there, and I'll make it just a little bit bigger. And then what I'm going to try and do is just basically mask that hairline with some edge. But what, oh yes, nearly forgot, you didn't remind me, did you? I need to put a new layer on. Okay, and we'll call this hair. Okay, and then on that layer I'm going to be painting with black, and I've got my paintbrush. So I'm now going to get this and just start going round the edge. And then if I've got my brush panel open, what I can do is I can rotate the brush a little bit, and then put a couple that way, and then rotate it back and put a couple, just so you've not got brush strokes going all in the same direction. And again, I'll go all the way around. You don't have to watch me going all the way around. I'll come back when I've done. See you in a minute. So we'll just finish off coming back down here, and again I'm just trying to make that edge look a little bit drawn in, and I can keep rotating my brush so that my brush strokes are at different angles, so they look as though they're a little bit of a sketchy look. And you could go around the whole of the outside if you wanted, but I'm just going to leave it there. You could probably take more time over it. I'll just move everything out of the way, and I don't think that looks bad. We're under the influence of the red colorization layer, so what I could do is basically take that to the top, so it'll then bring everything within that layer, or I can switch it off and just have a monotone or a black and white one. And if I'm honest, I quite like that better. I mean, let's just have a look quickly at, we'll use the blend if again and see if I can get a better look with that red. I just want it to be a little bit less in your face, and no, I don't think I can. So no, I'm going to stick with the monotone version. I quite like that. Well, okay, that was a bit of an epic. I really hope you liked it. If you did, give me a thumbs up or leave me a comment under the video. Please click that subscribe button and help me to grow my Photoshop learning community. I'll see you in the very next video. Bye for now.